Hridaya Bhasha Hridayam. The heart of the heart's language. An introduction to Sanskrit and the shorter Heart Sutra. Introduction. Namo Bhagavatye Prajnaparamitaye. This means homage to the Bhagavati, the perfection of wisdom. I will read each sentence in this text and then explain a little bit. And I read each sentence so that this can also be used as an audio course. The shorter Heart Sutra is a very concise expression of the Buddhist teachings, and especially of the perfection of wisdom, Prajnaparamita, the foundation of the Mahayana. The Heart Sutra has two versions. One is somewhat longer and the other one is extremely condensed. The very condensed version is very popular in East Asian Buddhism and doesn't contain some of the contextual elements in the sutra, but still contains the core central teachings about emptiness and appearance and their relation. It is written in simple language and it abbreviates longer lists that form the common vocabulary of Buddhist thought. It is written in simple language, indeed. The grammar is rather straightforward. The sentences do not contain very complex constructions. The vocabulary is somewhat limited, also because the text is very brief. And these various lists that I just mentioned are also found in non-Mahayana texts. They are somewhat presupposed by a lot of the Mahayana texts, and it is, I feel, extremely helpful, perhaps even necessary, to have some idea about these basic categories in order to read Buddhism more broadly. This course offers some initial steps in learning Sanskrit and is meant for complete beginners. The course introduces Sanskrit grammar through examples, through very concise explanations, and the amount of grammar that it introduces is not that much, but it should allow to gain some intuitive sense of the language. It may help others who have already studied some Sanskrit to approach the shorter Heart Sutra. So some people may already know a bit of Sanskrit, but they may not be familiar with Buddhist texts, and they may want to start learning Buddhist thought, so this may also be suitable for them. Even someone with no prior exposure to Sanskrit should be able to understand each sentence of the Heart Sutra by following this course. Now, this is what I would have really liked to do, what I tried to do when I was a Sanskrit student in the beginning, to be able to actually read one of the texts that I'm really interested in and understand the text in its original language. So this is the idea of this course. To make this possible, I have presented its vocabulary by highlighting the key points of Buddhist thought, the foundational teachings that seem to me necessary to follow the main content of the sutra. So one of the basic things I have done is to make the lists more explicit. When there are abbreviations, I explain the parts which are not explicitly mentioned, and I also try to make understandable how these lists relate to each other. Regular recitation of the daily chants is highly recommended. My main suggestion on how to learn from this course is to set aside at least 5 or 10 minutes for daily recitation of the daily chants. I think this is actually, in terms of how to learn, the main point. It may sound too simple. Of course, we don't have to worry too much about whether our pronunciation is perfect or not, especially in the beginning. It will get better through repetition. But this type of commitment to even a short timing is a type of learning through doing. So gaining practical knowledge, gaining a sense of familiarity with what one is engaging with. And this, I feel, is a very important feature in the transmission of knowledge, both within Sanskrit more broadly and especially for Buddhist thought. Beyond those 5 or 10 minutes, one may then study as much of the course as one may find suitable for one day. What I mean is focus in terms of commitment on the chanting part. Make sure that you never skip it, even if it's just 5 minutes, 10 minutes, it doesn't matter, but ensure that you never skip those 5-10 minutes. This is going to have very, very beneficial effect in the long term. As far as actually engaging with the more conceptual content, that is the second step, and even if one day you don't do it, it doesn't matter that much. But having those 5-10 minutes of repeated chanting actually builds up a habit which is extremely helpful in learning both Sanskrit and Buddhist thought in the long term. I also strongly recommend reading aloud all of the Sanskrit parts and to avoid reading silently for at least the first few years of learning. Now, this might seem like a strange request or suggestion, but it's a matter of exposure. Developing a regular habit of Sanskrit recitation and chanting is extremely helpful and allows for regular exposure to the sounds of the language. Now, we learn language primarily through exposure, and of course it's not so easy to find avenues to expose oneself to Sanskrit on a regular basis, but a simple, accessible one is through one's own voice. It makes a lot of difference when these words resound through one's body and we hear them, even if it's our own voice. The reading exercises in this book are meant to develop familiarity with both sound and meaning. Now, this is a recurrent motive in Sanskrit literature and philosophy. Sound and meaning, their close connection, the nature of this connection. So that's a very beautiful, I would say, characteristic of the reflection on language in the Sanskrit tradition, including the Buddhist. And thus I think that enacting this type of connection, not neglecting one of the two sides, is very helpful to somewhat get a sense of how this old tradition works. I thank Bhikshuni Dharmachitta Samiksha Meshram, also known as Maya Shrama, and Samiksha Kamble, also known as Kambala, for helpful corrections, and Mangalanatha, also known as Tashigumpo, for the image. This refers to the image of the Pratnya Paramita.